Hey there, night dwellers. You ever notice how hotels feel different at 2 a.m.? The way the hallways seem longer than they did when you checked in. The way every small sound, a door closing, footsteps above you, the hum of the ice machine, suddenly feels like it means something. The way you lie there in the dark, in a bed that 1,000 strangers have slept in, and wonder who else might still be in the room with you. There's a reason we feel uneasy in hotels. It's not just being away from home. It's knowing that these rooms have histories we'll never fully understand. Someone died in one of these beds. Someone cried themselves to sleep. Someone made a decision in one of these bathrooms that changed everything. And all of that, all that emotion, all that energy, it doesn't just disappear when housekeeping changes the sheets. Tonight, we're diving into 6 verified cases from hotels across America. These aren't urban legends passed down through Reddit threads. These are documented incidents, police reports, historical records, witness testimonies from people who checked into a hotel for a normal stay and checked out fundamentally changed. Some of these people were skeptics. Some believed in ghosts. But all of them encountered something in those rooms that made them question whether the living are ever really alone in places where so many have died. So here's the deal. I'm not going to tell you whether you should believe in ghosts or spirits or residual energy. That's for you to decide. But I will tell you this, every person you're about to hear from was just like you, traveling for work, attending a wedding, taking a vacation, doing normal things. And then something happened that wasn't normal at all, something that still wakes them up at night. Before we check into these nightmare hotels, if you've got your own hotel horror story, something that happened in a room that felt wrong, something you saw in a hallway that shouldn't have been there, something that made you check out early and never look back, send us an email. We want to know what's haunting you. One more thing. If you're listening to this in a hotel room right now, maybe don't look at that closet door that won't quite close all the way. Maybe don't think too hard about the stain on the ceiling that housekeeping keeps painting over. Maybe keep the bathroom light on tonight, because the people in these stories thought they were safe too. They thought locking the door was enough. They were wrong. All right. The lights are dimming, the hallways are empty, and we've got 6 true stories that prove some hotels never let their guests truly leave. Let's check in. Story 1. Cecil Hotel Death Investigation, LAPD Records. I never believed hotels could harbor evil until I stayed at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles in 2012, 1 year before the Elisa Lam case made headlines. I was 24, traveling alone for a job interview and looking for cheap accommodation in downtown LA. The Cecil Hotel had decent reviews online, or at least the ones that weren't buried by the algorithm. The price was right, $40 a night. I should have known better. The lobby smelled like industrial cleaner trying to mask something organic and wrong. The clerk barely looked at me as he slid a key across the counter. 14th floor, he muttered, elevators to your left. The elevator was old, the kind with an accordion gate and brass buttons worn smooth by decades of fingers. As I rode up, it stopped on the 7th floor. The doors opened to an empty hallway. No one got on. The doors closed. Then it stopped again on the 10th floor. Empty hallway, doors closed. This happened twice more before I reached 14. My room was at the end of a hallway that seemed to stretch forever under flickering fluorescent lights. The carpet was a pattern designed to hide stains. It was doing a poor job. Room 1427. I unlocked the door and stepped into a space that felt like it had absorbed decades of misery. The first night, I barely slept. The walls were thin enough that I could hear everything. A couple arguing in Spanish, footsteps pacing back and forth overhead, and around 3 a.m., someone running, sprinting, down the hallway outside my door, followed by the sound of fists pounding on a door and desperate sobbing. I pressed my eye to the peephole. The hallway was empty. The second night, I woke up to my room door handle turning. Slowly. Deliberately. I had locked it, but the deadbolt. But the handle kept rotating back and forth for nearly 5 minutes while I sat frozen in bed, phone in hand, ready to call 911. Then it stopped. In the morning, I mentioned it to the clerk. Different guy this time. He didn't seem surprised. Lock stick sometimes, he said, not meeting my eyes. Sometimes people get confused about which room is theirs. But I knew what I heard wasn't confusion, it was testing. The third night, I decided to investigate. I'd heard stories about the Cecil. Richard Ramirez had stayed there during his killing spree. So had other serial killers. The hotel had a history of deaths, suicides, murders. But I didn't know the full extent yet. Around 2 a.m. I took the elevator down, curious about those phantom stops. The elevator stopped on 7 again. When the doors opened, I saw something that made my blood freeze. At the far end of the hallway, a woman in a dark dress stood facing the wall, just standing there, motionless. I pressed the closed door button frantically. As the doors began to shut, she turned her head toward me, too far, at an angle that wasn't natural. The doors closed. I got off on the ground floor and walked straight to the front desk. I'm checking out, now. The night clerk, a woman this time, just nodded. That's probably for the best, she said quietly. Then she added something that still haunts me. The people who stay here longer than a few days, they're either running from something or they can't leave. And I don't mean the price. As I was collecting my refund, she leaned forward and whispered, "Next time you're looking for cheap hotels, pay the extra $20. Some places are cheap for a reason. The Cecil has been collecting bad energy since 1924. Murders, suicides. The Black Dahlia's last known location. It's not just a hotel anymore. It's a repository." I left at 3 a.m. dragging my suitcase down Main Street until I found an all-night diner. I sat there until sunrise, drinking coffee and trying to convince myself that the woman on the 7th floor had just been another guest. But I knew better. 1 year later, Elisa Lamb's body was found in the water tank on the roof. Guests had been complaining about the water pressure and strange taste for weeks before they found her. I had drunk that water. I had showered in it, and when I saw the elevator surveillance footage of Elisa acting strangely in the elevator, stopping at random floors, hiding in the corner, gesturing at something unseen, I recognized that elevator. Those were the same phantom stops I'd experienced. I've stayed in hundreds of hotels since then for work, but I always research the history now. I pay attention to the way clerks look at me when I check in, the smell of the lobby, the way the elevator behaves, because some places don't just house the living. Some places remember every person who suffered within their walls, and the Cecil Hotel remembers everything. Story 2. Kansas City Police reports the Rieger Hotel. Incidents. The Rieger Hotel in Kansas City looked beautiful in the photos. A historic building from 1915, recently renovated, with exposed brick and Art Deco fixtures. What the website didn't mention was why it had been closed for 30 years before reopening in 2014. I stayed there in March 2016 for a medical conference. The staff was friendly, the room was gorgeous, and for the first 2 nights, everything was perfect. Then I met the man in the hallway. It was 11 p.m. on my 3rd night. I'd been out with colleagues and was heading back to my room on the 4th floor. As I stepped off the elevator, I saw a man standing at the far end of the hallway, near the window. He was wearing what looked like a brown suit from the 1930s or 40s. I remember thinking it was odd, but assuming he was attending some kind of vintage-themed event. "Excuse me," I called out, walking toward my room. "Do you know what time the bar closes?" He turned to look at me. His face was wrong. Not disfigured or monstrous, but emotionless in a way that made my instincts scream. His eyes were dark and hollow. "The bar burned," he said flatly. "Everyone burned." Before I could respond, he walked through the wall, not around a corner, through the solid brick wall. I stood there, keycard trembling in my hand, trying to rationalize what I'd just seen. Exhaustion, too much wine at dinner, a shadow that looked like a person. But I knew what I'd seen. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the old building made me jump. Around 4 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my door, heavy, deliberate steps that stopped directly in front of my room. Then, 3 slow knocks. I looked through the peephole. Nothing, just an empty hallway lit by wall sconces. The next morning, I asked the concierge about the building's history, trying to sound casual. His expression shifted. "You saw something, didn't you?" I hesitated, then nodded. He sighed and leaned forward. "The Rieger has a history. In 1920, during Prohibition, the basement was used for illegal gambling and drinking. The owner at the time, Frank Rieger, ran it with the mob. In 1933, there was a fire. Started in the basement, supposedly an accident, but everyone knew it was arson. Rival gang. 7 people died, trapped in the basement when the stairs collapsed. But that's not all, he continued. In 1952, a guest on the 4th floor, room 417, shot himself. Depression. The hotel covered it up. And in 1974, a woman fell from a 4th floor window. They called it suicide, but her family insisted she was pushed. Room 417. My room. I felt sick. Why didn't anyone tell me? Would you have stayed if we did? He shrugged. Look, most guests never experience anything. But some people are sensitive. They see things, hear things. If you're uncomfortable, I can move you to a different floor. I accepted the offer immediately. They moved me to the 2nd floor, and I slept with all the lights on. But that last night in 417, I'd felt something. A pressure in the room, like invisible hands pushing down on my chest while I slept. I'd thought it was sleep paralysis. Now, I knew better. On my final morning, as I was checking out, a housekeeper approached me in the lobby. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with kind eyes. "You were in 417, she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "I've been working here since it reopened in 2014. That room, it's the most active. Guests report feeling watched, electronics malfunction. Some wake up with scratches, but the man in the hallway, the one in the brown suit, he shows up on the 4th floor about once a month, always near room 417. "Who is he?" I asked. "We don't know his name, but based on descriptions, we think he was one of the men who died in the fire. Some of the older records from the 1930s mention a regular guest, a gangster who stayed in room 417 before it was renumbered. He disappeared in 1933, the same year as the fire." She patted my arm. "You're not crazy, and you're not the first to see him. Just be grateful he didn't follow you home." That last part bothered me. The idea that something could follow you home. For weeks after returning, I felt watched in my own apartment. Objects would move slightly. Keys, phone, wallet, never where I'd left them. Then one night, I smelled smoke. Thick, acrid smoke, like wood burning. I ran through my apartment searching for the source. Nothing, no fire. But the smell was overwhelming. Then I remembered something the housekeeper had said. The man in the brown suit. Everyone who sees him smells smoke within a week. It's his way of reminding you that he's still burning. I looked up cleansing rituals online. Sage, salt, prayer. I tried everything. The smoke smell gradually faded over the course of a month, and the feeling of being watched eventually stopped. But I never stayed in a historic hotel again. And whenever I smell smoke now, even a campfire or a barbecue, I think of that man in the brown suit, standing at the end of the hallway, turning to look at me with those hollow eyes. Some ghosts don't stay where they died. Some of them follow you home. Story 3. Stanley Hotel Archives, Estes Park. Historical Society. Everyone knows the Stanley Hotel in Colorado inspired Stephen King to write The Shining. What most people don't know is that the real horror stories from that hotel are worse than fiction. I worked there as a night auditor for 8 months in 2017. I needed a job, and the Stanley was hiring. The pay was decent, the location was beautiful, and I'd grown up nearby, so I knew the history. I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. My shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. For the first few weeks, it was quiet, processing late check-ins, handling guest requests, watching the empty lobby. The Stanley is beautiful at night, all polished wood and elegant fixtures, but there's a weight to it, a presence. The incident started small. Lights flickering in empty hallways, elevators moving between floors with no one inside. The piano in the music room occasionally playing single notes, even though it was locked and secured every night. I could rationalize those things. Old building, electrical issues, settling foundation. Then I met Lucy. It was 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. The lobby was empty, and I was updating the reservation system when I heard a child giggling. Light, playful, echoing from the direction of the main staircase. I looked up. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, stood on the landing. She wore an old-fashioned white dress, the kind from the early 19s, and her hair was in ringlets. She was bouncing a red ball. "Sweetheart," I called out, concerned, "are you lost? Where are your parents?" She giggled again and ran up the stairs, the ball bouncing ahead of her. I followed immediately. A child alone in a hotel at 2:30 a.m. was a serious situation, but when I reached the second floor, she was gone. I checked every hallway, every corner, nothing. I called security. They reviewed the cameras. There was no child, but they didn't seem surprised. "You saw Lucy," the security guard said. "Fourth floor is her usual spot, but she wanders. F.O. Stanley's goddaughter. Died in 1918 during the Spanish flu outbreak. She was staying here with her family when she got sick. You'll see her again." He was right. Over the next few months, I saw Lucy at least a dozen times, always between 2 and 4 a.m., always playing with that red ball. She never spoke, but sometimes she'd look directly at me and smile. It wasn't threatening, just sad. But Lucy wasn't the worst thing in the Stanley. The worst thing lived in room 217. We had a policy: never book room 217 without warning the guests about its history. It was the room where Stephen King stayed in 1974, where he had the nightmare that inspired his novel. It was also the room where a housekeeper named Mrs. Wilson was nearly killed in 1911 when a gas leak caused an explosion that blew her through the floor. Mrs. Wilson survived, but according to staff, she never left. Guests in 217 reported the same things: someone unpacking their luggage while they were out, clothes neatly folded and put away, items arranged in specific spots, and at night, the sensation of someone sitting on the edge of the bed. One guest, a man from Texas, came down to the lobby at 3 a.m., white as a sheet, and demanded to be moved. He'd woken up to see a woman in a gray housekeeper's uniform standing over him, tucking in the sheets around his body. When he sat up, she vanished. I believed him, because I'd been in that room. It was January, slow season, and we had a pipe burst on the third floor. I was sent to move guests around, which meant I needed to inspect available rooms. Room 217 was open. The moment I stepped inside, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath. The bathroom light was on, even though I'd just watched maintenance turn off all the power to that room. I walked toward the bathroom, every instinct screaming at me to leave. The door was ajar. I pushed it open. The mirror was fogged up, as if someone had just taken a hot shower, and written in the condensation in neat cursive letters was, "Welcome back." I ran. I literally ran out of that room, down the stairs and back to the lobby. I refused to go back. They sent maintenance instead. When maintenance arrived, the bathroom was cold. The mirror was clear. No message. But they found wet footprints on the bathroom floor. Small, bare feet. Women's size 5. Mrs. Wilson's shoe size, according to the historical records. After that, I started experiencing things at home. I'd wake up to find my clothes folded and put away, even though I'd left them on a chair. Items in my apartment would move. Once, I came home to find every drawer and cabinet in my kitchen open, not violently, but methodically, like someone had been searching for something. I lasted 2 more months before I quit. The final straw was the night I was closing the lobby and heard footsteps on the floor above me. Heavy, deliberate pacing back and forth. I checked the system. No guests on that floor. Security was on the other side of the building. I grabbed my coat and keys and walked out. I didn't even clock out properly. The Stanley Hotel is beautiful. It's historic. It's a landmark. But it's also home to things that don't rest. Lucy, bouncing her ball in empty hallways. Mrs. Wilson, still working, still tidying, unable to stop even in death. And whatever else lives in those walls, in those shadows, watching guests sleep. I drive past the Stanley sometimes when I visit family in Estes Park. It still looks beautiful from the outside, lit up against the mountains. But I know what's inside, and I'll never go back. Story 4. San Francisco. Police reports, Queen Anne Hotel investigation files. The Queen Anne Hotel in San Francisco is a beautiful Victorian mansion built in 1890. It operated as a finishing school for girls before becoming a hotel in 1980. What the brochures don't tell you is that the headmistress never left. I stayed there in September 2019 for a friend's wedding. I'm a skeptic, or at least I was. I don't believe in ghosts, psychics, or anything supernatural. I'm a data analyst. I deal in facts and numbers. But what happened in room 410 changed everything. The hotel assigned me room 410 without any warning. It's a corner room with bay windows overlooking the street, decorated in period-appropriate furniture and deep red wallpaper. Beautiful, but something felt off the moment I walked in. The air was too still, too heavy. I unpacked my suitcase, hung up my dress for the wedding, and went out for dinner. When I returned at 10 p.m., my suitcase had been unpacked, completely. Every item of clothing was neatly folded in the dresser drawers or hanging in the closet. My toiletries were arranged on the bathroom counter in a precise line. I called the front desk immediately. "Did housekeeping come into my room?" "No, ma'am," the clerk said. "Housekeeping ends at 6 p.m. and we never enter a room after a guest has checked in without explicit permission." "Then someone was in my room. My things have been moved." There was a pause. "You're in room 410? "Yes." Another pause. "I see. Would you like us to move you to a different room?" "I'd like an explanation first." The clerk sighed. Room 410 was the headmistress's private quarters when this building was the Mary Lake School for Girls. Her name was Mary Lake. She died in 1940. Guests in that room frequently report items being moved, unpacked, or rearranged. She was known for being particular about organization. I almost laughed. "You're telling me a ghost unpacked my suitcase?" "I'm telling you what guests have reported. If you'd like to move to a different room, we have availability on the second floor." I declined. I'm not superstitious, and I wasn't going to let stories about a dead headmistress run me out of a beautiful room. I repacked my suitcase, locked it, and went to bed. At 3:17 a.m., I remember checking my phone. I woke up to the sensation of someone tucking the blankets tightly around my body. Not violently, but firmly, the way a parent might tuck in a child. I was completely wrapped, unable to move my arms. I sat up fast, kicking off the covers. The room was empty, but I could smell lavender, strong, overwhelming, like someone had just walked past wearing lavender perfume. I turned on every light in the room and sat in the chair by the window until sunrise. I didn't sleep. The next morning I went down to breakfast early. An older woman, maybe in her 70s, was sitting alone at a table. She smiled when she saw me. "You're in 410, aren't you?" she asked. I stopped. "How did you know? How did you have that look. Mary got you too." She gestured to the empty chair. "Sit. I'll tell you about her." Her name was Patricia, and she'd been researching the Queen Anne for a book on haunted hotels. She knew everything about Mary Lake. Mary Lake ran the school from 1890 until 1896, Patricia explained. She was strict, deeply religious, and absolutely devoted to her students. But she was also controlling. Everything had to be perfect. Perfect posture, perfect handwriting, perfect behavior. When the school closed due to financial problems, Mary was devastated. She lived in room 410 for the rest of her life, essentially as a recluse, until she died in 1940. "Okay," I said, "but why is she still here?" "Because she never accepted that the school closed. In her mind, she's still the headmistress, still responsible for the girls who lived here. When guests stay in her room, she treats them like students. She unpacks their things, tucks them in at night, rearranges their belongings. She's not malicious, she's just still doing her job." "That's insane," I said. Patricia shrugged. "Is it? You felt her tuck you in last night, didn't you?" I didn't answer, because she was right. "Here's the thing about Mary," Patricia continued. "She only bothers people who resist her. If you let her do what she wants, let her arrange your things, tuck you in, play headmistress, she's harmless. But if you fight her, things escalate." "What do you mean, escalate?" "A man stayed in 410 3 years ago. He kept repacking his suitcase every time Mary unpacked it. He'd move his things back, she'd move them again. It became a battle of wills. On his third night, he woke up to all the furniture in the room rearranged. The bed moved to the center of the room, the dresser blocking the door, the chair on top of the desk. It took 3 staff members to move everything back." I felt cold. "What did he do?" "He checked out at 2 a.m. and never came back. I returned to room 410 that afternoon after the wedding rehearsal. My clothes were unpacked again. This time, I didn't call the front desk. I didn't repack them. I just Let it happen. That night, I felt the blankets tuck around me again at 3 a.m., but this time, I didn't fight it. I just whispered, "Thank you, Mary." The tucking stopped. The lavender smell faded, and I slept peacefully until morning. On my final day, I left a note on the desk before checking out. "Thank you for your hospitality, Miss Lake. Your room is beautiful." When I came back from breakfast to collect my luggage, the note had been moved to the center of the pillow, and next to it was a single pressed flower, a lavender sprig, perfectly preserved, as if it had been saved for decades. I still have that flower. It's pressed in a book on my shelf. And sometimes, late at night, I smell lavender in my apartment, just a hint, just enough to remind me that some people care so deeply about their purpose that even death can't make them stop. Mary Lake is still the head mistress of room 410. And if you ever stay there, my advice is simple. Let her do her job. Don't fight her, because in her mind, she's just taking care of you. And in a strange way, she is. Story 5. New Orleans Police Department Records, Hotel Monteleone Investigation Files. The Hotel Monteleone in New Orleans is a landmark. Opened in 1886, it's hosted famous writers like Ernest Hemingway, Tennessee Williams, and Truman Capote. It's also home to something that doesn't want you to leave. I visited New Orleans in February 2018 for Mardi Gras. My husband and I booked a room at the Monteleone because of its history and central location. We were given room 1423 on the 14th floor. From the moment we entered, something felt wrong. The room was elegant. High ceilings, antique furniture, a marble bathroom. But it was cold. Not temperature cold, the heating worked fine. It was an emotional cold, like walking into a room where someone had just been crying. My husband didn't feel it. He was excited, taking photos, admiring the view of the French Quarter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. That first night, we went out to Bourbon Street, had too much to drink, and stumbled back to the hotel around 2 a.m. We fell asleep immediately. At 4:37 a.m., I woke up to my husband shaking my shoulder. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "Hear what?" "A child crying in the hallway." We both lay there, silent, listening, and then I heard it. A soft, muffled sobbing, like a small child trying not to be heard. It was coming from right outside our door. My husband got up and looked through the peephole. There's no one there. But the crying continued. He opened the door. The hallway was empty and silent. The crying had stopped the moment the door opened. We went back to bed, but neither of us slept well. In the morning, I asked the concierge about the 14th floor. "Has anyone ever reported hearing children crying?" His expression changed. "You're in 1423? I nodded. "That's one of our active rooms. The 14th floor has a lot of history. Children have been heard on this floor for decades. We're not entirely sure why, but the prevailing theory involves a family that stayed here in 1912. He pulled out a folder from behind the desk. Clearly, he'd had this conversation before. In October 1912, a family from Mobile, Alabama was staying on the 14th floor. Parents and 2 children, a boy, age 10, and a girl, age 4. They were here for a week. On their last night, the little girl, Josephine, disappeared from the room. She was found the next morning on the roof, 14 floors up. The door to the roof was locked from the inside. No one knows how she got up there. "Did she die?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "She fell, or jumped, or was pushed. The investigation was inconclusive. The family left immediately and the hotel tried to keep it quiet. But staff started reporting a little girl crying on the 14th floor. Guests reported seeing her, always wearing a white nightgown, always near the elevators or the stairwell, always crying." "And you still rent these rooms?" my husband asked. The concierge shrugged. "It's history. Most guests never experience anything, but some do. If you'd like to move..." "No," I said. I'm not sure why. Maybe I felt bad for Josephine. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I was stupid. That night we heard the crying again, but this time my husband opened the door faster and we both saw her. She was standing at the end of the hallway near the stairwell. A little girl in a white nightgown, barefoot, with long dark hair covering her face. She was crying, deep shaking sobs. "Sweetheart," I called out, "are you okay?" She looked up. Her face was pale, her eyes were dark hollows, and her mouth was open in a silent scream. Then she ran. Not toward us, but toward the stairwell. The heavy fire door swung open on its own, and she disappeared through it. My husband and I stood frozen in the doorway. The fire door slowly closed with a soft click. "We're leaving," my husband said. "No, not yet. I need to know what happened to her." I don't know what possessed me, no pun intended, but I walked to the stairwell and opened the door. The stairs went up and down, dimly lit by emergency lights. I looked up, 14 floors to the roof. "Josephine," I called softly. "Josephine, are you here?" I heard footsteps above me, small, quick footsteps, running up the stairs. Against every horror movie instinct I have, I followed. I climbed to the 15th floor, then the 16th, then the 17th. The footsteps stayed ahead of me, always just out of sight. Finally, I reached the roof access door. It was locked with a heavy chain and padlock, but the footsteps hadn't stopped. They were on the other side of the door. I pressed my ear against it. I could hear her crying. And then, very softly, I heard a voice, a little girl's voice saying, "Mama? Where's Mama?" "Josephine," I said, "your Mama's not here. She's gone. You need to rest now." The crying stopped. "Mama's gone?" "Yes, sweetheart, a long time ago." There was a long silence. Then, "Will you help me find her?" My heart broke. "I can't, honey, but she's waiting for you. You just have to let go. You have to stop looking for her here." "I'm scared." "I know, but it's okay to be scared. You can go to her now." Another long silence. Then I heard the footsteps again. But this time, they were moving away, fading, like someone walking into the distance. The crying stopped completely. I stood there for a few more minutes, but I heard nothing else. Finally, I walked back down to the 14th floor. My husband was waiting in the hallway, looking terrified. "What the hell were you thinking?" he demanded. "I don't know, but I think she's gone." We didn't hear the crying again that night, or the next night. On our last morning, the concierge pulled me aside. "I heard you went to the roof access last night." "How did you know?" "Security cameras, but that's not important. What is important is that we haven't had any reports of crying on the 14th floor since you got here. Not from any guest. That's unusual." "Maybe she moved on," I said. He looked at me with something like respect. "Maybe. Or maybe you gave her permission to leave. Some spirits just need someone to tell them it's okay." I don't know if Josephine found her mother. I don't know if ghosts work that way. But I like to think that wherever she is now, she's not crying anymore. She's not trapped on the 14th floor of the Hotel Monteleone, searching endlessly for a parent who left her behind. Because the worst kind of haunting isn't the violent kind, it's the sad kind. The kind where someone is so lost, so confused, so desperate for help that they can't move on. And sometimes, all they need is for someone to listen. Story 6. Overlook Hotel Incident Reports, Oregon State Police Files. The Timberline Lodge on Mount Hood, Oregon, served as the exterior inspiration for Kubrick's The Shining. But in 2014, something happened there that rivaled any horror film, and it was completely real. I wasn't a guest. I was part of the search and rescue team that responded when a family of 4 went missing from their room on the 3rd floor. It was January 17th, 2014. Heavy snow had been falling for 3 days, and the lodge was operating at half capacity. The family, David and Michelle Keller, and their 2 sons, ages 6 and 8, had checked in for a weekend ski trip. They were from Portland, experienced winter travelers. On their second night, they had dinner in the lodge restaurant at 7 p.m. Staff remembered them because the younger son had been excited about seeing snow. They went up to room 307 around 8:30 p.m. That was the last confirmed sighting. At 11 a.m. the next morning, the Kellers missed their checkout time. Housekeeping knocked. No answer. They used the master key. The room was empty. But here's where it gets strange. All of their belongings were still there. Luggage, phones, wallets, car keys, winter coats. The beds looked slept in, but there was no sign of the family. The lodge manager called the police at 11:45 a.m. By 1 p.m., we had a full search and rescue operation underway. We searched every floor, every room, every storage closet, every maintenance area. We searched the grounds around the lodge, though it seemed impossible that a family of 4, including 2 small children, could have left the building in the middle of the night during a blizzard without coats or shoes. We found nothing. On the second day, we brought in cadaver dogs. They alerted in the 3rd floor hallway, right outside room 307. They also alerted in the stairwell between the 3rd and 4th floors. We found no bodies, no blood, no evidence of violence. On the 3rd day, we expanded the search to the surrounding forest. That's when we found the first footprint, a child's bare footprint in the snow, a quarter mile from the lodge. It was fresh, less than 12 hours old. We followed the prints. They led deeper into the forest, up the mountain, in a straight line. No adult prints, just one set of small, bare children's feet. The prints ended at the base of a massive Douglas fir. We searched the area for hours, nothing. No body, no clothing, just those footprints ending at the tree. 4 days into the search, a hiker found Michelle Keller's body 3 miles away in a completely different direction. She was frozen, wearing only a nightgown, no shoes. The autopsy showed hypothermia as the cause of death. But here's what disturbed us. She had been walking in circles. Her path, tracked through the snow, showed that she had walked the same 200-foot loop at least 40 times before collapsing, like she was looking for something, or someone. We never found David Keller or the 2 children. 6 weeks later, the case was officially suspended. No evidence of abduction, no ransom demands, no bodies except Michelle's. The FBI investigated, but found nothing. The case remains open and unsolved. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. Room 307 has had problems ever since. Guests report hearing children laughing in the hallway outside that room. Footsteps running back and forth, knocking on the door at all hours. The lodge has stopped renting that room permanently. And every winter, when the snow gets heavy, staff report seeing tracks in the snow around the lodge, small footprints, bare feet, appearing overnight and leading into the forest. They never lead back. I've been on dozens of search and rescue operations. People get lost in the wilderness, they die of exposure. It's tragic, but understandable. But the Keller case is different. How do 4 people leave a locked hotel room in the middle of a blizzard without coats or shoes? Why would Michelle walk in circles until she froze to death? Where did the children go? I've read the theories. Fugue state, group psychosis, carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty heater, but none of them explain the footprints or the timeline or the locked door. Unless something in that room, something old, something patient, convinced them to leave, convinced them to walk into the snow, convinced them they were following someone they loved. The Timberline Lodge is beautiful. It's historic. Families stay there every winter for skiing and snowboarding, but I'll never go back. Because I've seen what it can do. And because on my last day of the search, when I was alone in room 307 collecting evidence, I heard it. Clear as day. A child's voice coming from the bathroom. Daddy says we can stay. Daddy says we don't have to go home. There was no one in that bathroom, but I heard it. And when I turned to leave, I saw wet footprints on the carpet. Small, child-sized bare feet leading from the bathroom to the door. They were fresh. The carpet was wet. I ran. The Keller case is still officially open. If you have any information, you can contact the Oregon State Police. But I'll tell you what I told the FBI. Something is wrong with that room. Something that can make a family of 4 walk into a blizzard and never come back. And on cold winter nights when the snow falls heavy on Mount Hood, those children are still there. Still playing, still waiting, still calling for their parents. 6 hotels, 6 people who thought they were just booking a place to sleep. The Cecil, where the elevator still stops on empty floors and the water still tastes wrong. The Rieger, where a man in a brown suit has been burning since 1933. The Stanley, where Lucy bounces her red ball and Mrs. Wilson tucks you in whether you want her to or not. The Queen Anne, where Headmistress Mary Lake still runs her school. The Monteleone, where Josephine searches every hallway for a mother who left her behind. And Timberline Lodge, where the Keller family walked into the snow and became part of the mountain forever. Here's what haunts me about these cases. None of these people were asking for this. They weren't investigating. They weren't provoking. They just wanted a shower and a bed and 8 hours of sleep before their morning meeting or their friend's wedding or their drive home. But that's the thing about hotels. You're never just renting a room. You're renting a space that's absorbed decades, sometimes centuries, of human experience. Joy, fear, violence, despair, death, and all of that. It doesn't just evaporate when housekeeping changes the sheets. All right, listen, here's what I need from you. First, if these stories made you rethink that charming historic boutique hotel you were about to book, hit that like button. Let YouTube know this is what people actually want to watch, not another jump scare compilation with stolen footage. Second, subscribe and smash that notification bell. I'm not being dramatic. In 72 hours, we're dropping verified cases from abandoned psychiatric hospitals where night guards reported patients in hallways that were supposed to be empty. Patients who were never admitted. Patients who died decades before the guards were even born. You don't want to miss that. Hit subscribe right now. Third, and this is important, some of you reading the comments right now have your own hotel story. I can feel it. Maybe you woke up at 3 a.m. to someone standing at the foot of your bed who vanished when you blinked. Maybe you heard your name whispered in a bathroom mirror. Maybe the door handle turned slowly, deliberately, for 5 straight minutes while you sat frozen under the covers. Send that story to our email. The most compelling ones get featured in our next hotel episode, with full credit to you, your username, whatever you want. Don't think your story isn't good enough. If it scared you enough that you still think about it, if it changed how you travel, if you've never told anyone because you're afraid they'll think you're crazy, it belongs here. And one more thing, you know someone who refuses to talk about what happened to them in a hotel. Someone who only books brand new chain hotels now. Someone who came back from a business trip different, quieter, more careful. Send them this video, not as a joke, but as permission to finally talk about it, as proof they're not alone. The truth is, we spend a third of our lives unconscious, vulnerable, defenseless, and when we do it in rooms where others have suffered, where violence happened, where someone drew their last breath, we're opening a door we don't fully understand, a door that doesn't always close the way we expect. So next time you check into a hotel, especially one with history, with character, with stories the front desk doesn't mention in the brochure, pay attention to what your body tells you the moment you step into that room. If the air feels heavy, if your skin prickles, if some ancient part of your brain whispers danger, listen to it. Because every single person in these 6 stories ignored that feeling. They told themselves they were being paranoid. They rationalized. They convinced themselves it was nothing, and they were wrong. This has been Mind Crawl. 6 true nightmare hotel encounters from across America, every story documented, every source verified, every person permanently changed. New case drops in 72 hours. Be there. And if you're in a hotel room right now listening to this in the dark, maybe keep those lights on tonight, because you might not be as alone as you think. Sweet dreams.